The air on Kepler Station always smelled like burnt metal and broken dreams. Han Sol pulled his security jacket tighter as he walked down the main corridor. The jacket was too big for him and had holes in 3 places. It was the best he could afford. Kepler Station sat on the edge of human space like a rusty coin dropped in the dark. Ships came and went, carrying people who had nowhere else to go. Some were running from the law. Others were running from worse things. Han Sol was running from both. He stopped at the security checkpoint and looked at his watch. Still 2 hours left on his shift. 2 more hours of checking cargo passes and pretending he had authority. The other guards knew he was nobody important. They barely spoke to him. A year ago, Han Sol had been Lieutenant Commander Han Sol of the Earth Navy. He had worn a real uniform with real rank bars. He had commanded respect and led good soldiers. That was before the disaster at Titan Base, before his mistake got 12 people killed, before the court-martial and the discharge papers. Now he was just Han Sol, late shift security guard on a station where nobody asked questions about your past. The comm system crackled to life. Attention Kepler Station. Transport vessel Dawn Runner requesting docking permission. We carry refugees from the outer colonies. Han Sol pressed the response button. Dawn Runner, you are cleared for docking Bay 7. Follow standard quarantine procedures. Refugee ships always made him sad. They carried people who had lost everything. Their homes, their families, sometimes their hope. The lucky ones found new lives in the inner colonies. The unlucky ones stayed on stations like Kepler forever. He decided to walk down to docking Bay 7. It was better than standing around the security desk doing nothing. The corridor leading to the bay was longer than most. It gave new arrivals time to smell the station and understand what kind of place they had come to. The Dawn Runner was an old cargo vessel that had been converted to carry people. It was not pretty, but it was strong. As Han Sol watched, the airlock opened and passengers began to file out. They looked like all refugees looked. Tired, scared, carrying everything they owned in small bags. Most were human, but there were a few aliens mixed in. A family of blue-skinned Centaurians, 2 tall beings that looked like walking trees, an old man who might have been from Proxima Colony. Then she stepped out of the ship. Han Sol had seen big people before. The station attracted all types. But this woman was different. She was almost 7 feet tall with broad shoulders that filled the doorway. Her skin was dark brown and her black hair was pulled back in a single braid that hung down to her waist. She wore simple work clothes that had seen better days, but it was not her size that made Han Sol stare. It was the way she moved. Each step was careful and controlled. She held her head high and her back straight. When people stared at her, she looked back calmly. There was no anger in her eyes, no shame, just quiet strength. As she walked past the other passengers, Han Sol noticed something else. Her left arm glinted slightly under the station lights, cybernetic enhancement. Her legs moved too smoothly to be completely natural. More enhancement. This woman was built for heavy work in dangerous places. The other passengers gave her space without being asked. Not from fear, Han Sol realized. From respect. She carried a single duffel bag over her shoulder like it weighed nothing. As she passed the security checkpoint, she nodded politely to Han Sol. Her eyes were dark brown and very calm. For just a moment, their eyes met. He felt something he had not felt in a long time. Curiosity. Most refugees hurried away from the security checkpoint as fast as they could. This woman walked at her own pace. She stopped to help an elderly Centaurian man who had dropped his belongings. She lifted his heavy case like it was made of feathers and handed it back to him with a small smile. Han Sol watched her until she disappeared around a corner heading toward the residential section. Only then did he realize he had been holding his breath. Never seen one like that before, said a voice behind him. Han Sol turned to see Gus, one of the senior guards. Gus had been on Kepler Station for 8 years. He knew everyone and everything that happened here. What do you mean? Han Sol asked. Enhanced humans like her don't usually end up in refugee ships, Gus said. Those modifications cost more than most people make in 5 years. She must have been somebody important before she got here. What kind of work requires modifications like that? Han Sol asked. Terraforming, deep space construction, mining on high-gravity worlds. Dangerous stuff that regular humans can't do. Gus shrugged. Could be military, too. Some special forces get enhanced like that. Han Sol nodded and tried to look uninterested. But his mind was racing. What had happened to bring someone like that to Kepler Station? What was her story? The rest of his shift passed slowly. Hansol checked cargo manifests and visitor passes without really paying attention. His thoughts kept returning to the tall woman with the dark eyes and quiet strength. He wondered what her name was. He wondered if he would see her again. When his shift ended, Hansol walked to his small quarters in the lower section of the station. The room was barely big enough for a bed, a desk, and a small food unit. It was all he could afford on his security guard salary. He lay on his narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. Above him, somewhere in the residential section, was a woman who had traveled across the galaxy carrying secrets he could not imagine. Tomorrow he would go back to his security checkpoint and check more passes for more strangers. But tonight, for the first time in months, Hansol had something interesting to think about besides his failures and regrets. Tonight he had a mystery, and mysteries, he remembered, were always worth solving. Outside his small window, the stars burned cold and distant in the black space around Kepler Station. Somewhere among those stars was whatever the tall woman was running from, and somewhere else maybe was what she was running toward. 3 days passed before Hansol saw the tall woman again. He had been thinking about her more than he cared to admit. During his security rounds, he found himself looking for her in the crowds that moved through the station corridors. On the morning of the 4th day, he decided to take a different route to the security office. This path led through the industrial section where the heavy machinery was kept. Most people avoided this area because of the noise and smell of engine oil, but Hansol was curious. The machinery bay was huge and filled with equipment that kept the station running. Power generators hummed loudly. Air recyclers clicked and wheezed. Repair bays held broken ships waiting to be fixed. And there, working on a massive cargo loader, was the woman from the refugee ship. She wore work coveralls that were stained with grease. Her long braid was tucked inside her shirt to keep it safe from the moving parts. She was lifting engine components that should have required 3 normal people to move. Her cybernetic arm moved smoothly as she positioned heavy metal pieces with perfect control. Hansol stood in the doorway and watched her work. She moved with the confidence of someone who understood machines. Each action was planned and precise. She was not just strong, she was skilled. "Can I help you with something?" she asked without looking up from her work. Hansol jumped. He had not realized she knew he was there. "I was just passing through. I did not mean to bother you." She straightened up and turned to face him. Up close, she was even more impressive. Her face was calm, but her dark eyes missed nothing. There were small scars on her hands that spoke of years working with dangerous equipment. "You are the security guard from the docking bay," she said. It was not a question. "Yes, Hansol. I work the late shift at Checkpoint 3. She nodded. "I am Yonsu. I started working here yesterday." "The machinery bay is good work if you can get it," Hansol said. "The pay is better than security." "The machines do not ask questions about where you came from," Yonsu replied. There was something in her voice that suggested she had been asked too many questions already. Hansol was about to respond when loud voices echoed from the main corridor. 3 beings entered the machinery bay. They were Vakari, a species that looked like walking lizards with too many teeth. The Vakari were known for being aggressive and difficult to deal with. The largest Vakari pointed at Yonsu. "You are the new worker. We have business with you." Yonsu set down the component she was holding. "What kind of business?" "This is our territory. Anyone who works here pays us for protection. 50 credits per week." Hansol recognized this game. The Vakari ran a small smuggling operation out of the lower levels. They liked to intimidate new arrivals and collect tribute money. Most people paid because fighting them was more trouble than it was worth. "I do not need protection," Yonsu said quietly. The Vakari leader laughed. It was an unpleasant sound. "Everyone needs protection, especially big targets like you. Accidents happen to people who do not pay." Hansol felt his old training kick in. He had seen bullies before. The smart thing would be to walk away and report this to senior security later. But something about the calm way Yonsu stood there made him step forward. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, trying to sound more confident than he felt. The 3 Vakari turned toward him. The leader's yellow eyes looked him up and down. "Security guard, this is not your business." "Actually, extortion is exactly my business," Hansol said. His hand moved to his stun baton. It was not much of a weapon, but it was all he had. The Vakari leader hissed and reached for something under his jacket. His two companions spread out to flank Hansol. This was about to become a fight that Hansol could not win. Then Yunsu moved. She did not run or shout. She simply walked over to the nearest Vakari and placed her hand on his shoulder. The alien tried to pull away but could not move. Yunsu's cybernetic grip was too strong. "I think you should leave now," she said in the same quiet voice she had used before. The Vakari she was holding made a choking sound. His feet barely touched the floor as she lifted him slightly. The other two aliens backed away, suddenly uncertain. "You cannot do this," the leader said. "There will be consequences." "Perhaps," Yunsu agreed. She turned to look at him directly. "But those consequences will happen to you first." There was something in her voice that made the leader step back. Some quality that suggested she had faced much worse things than 3 small-time criminals. The Vakari looked at each other, then at the woman who held their companion like he was a child. "This is not over," the leader said, but he was already moving toward the exit. Yunsu gently set the third Vakari back on his feet. He scrambled away after his friends without saying anything. In seconds, the machinery bay was quiet again except for the humming of the generators. Hansol realized his heart was beating fast. "That was impressive." "That was stupid," Yunsu replied. "Now they will cause problems for both of us." "They were going to cause problems anyway. At least now they know you will not be an easy target." Yunsu picked up her tools and returned to her work. "You did not have to step in. I can take care of myself." "I know," Hansol said, but it seemed like the right thing to do. She looked at him for a long moment. "Thank you." Those 2 words carried more weight than Hansol expected. He realized this woman was not used to people helping her. Most people probably stayed away from her because of her size and modifications. "The Vakari will try again," he said. "Probably with more friends next time." "I know. I have some experience dealing with troublemakers. From my Navy days. If you want help figuring out how to handle them." Yunsu stopped working and studied his face. "Navy? Used to be. Long time ago," she nodded slowly. "What happened?" "I made a mistake. People died." The words came out easier than Hansol expected. He had not talked about Titan Base with anyone since his discharge. "We all make mistakes," Yunsu said. "The question is what we do afterward." "What did you do?" "After your mistake, I mean." For the first time, Yunsu smiled slightly. "I came here. Just like you." Hansol felt something shift between them, some barrier coming down. They were both people running from their past, trying to build something new on a forgotten station at the edge of space. "I should get back to my shift," he said. "But if you need help with the Vakari, I will remember," she said. As Hansol walked back toward the security checkpoint, he found himself smiling. For the first time since arriving on Kepler Station, he felt like he might have made a friend. And judging by what he had just witnessed, it was a very good friend to have. 2 weeks had passed since the incident with the Vakari. Hansol had started taking his meals in the machinery bay cafeteria, instead of eating alone in his quarters. Yunsu usually sat by herself at a corner table, so he began sitting nearby. At first they just nodded to each other. Then they started talking about small things. The weather controls, the quality of the food, the strange noises the station made at night. Slowly, Hansol learned more about her. She had been a terraforming engineer on the colony worlds. Her cybernetic modifications were designed for working in extreme conditions. High-gravity planets, toxic atmospheres, places where normal humans could not survive. "The colonies always need more habitable worlds," she explained one day, while they ate the cafeteria's version of noodle soup. "Someone has to do the dangerous work of making dead planets livable. Is that how you got the enhancements?" Hansol asked. "Some of them. The strength augmentation and the reinforced skeleton were for heavy lifting in high gravity. The arm replacement came later, after an accident with mining equipment on Kepler 442b. Hansol noticed she did not talk about why she left that life behind. Everyone on Kepler Station had secrets. He respected that. What he did not understand was why everyone else on the station seemed afraid of her. In the corridors, people stepped aside when she approached. In the cafeteria, other workers chose tables far from where she sat. Even the tough cargo handlers who feared nothing gave her plenty of space. It was not just her size, though she was taller than almost everyone. It was something else. Something about the way she moved with perfect control, the way her cybernetic arm never made mistakes, the quiet confidence that surrounded her like a protective field. But Hansol was not afraid. The more time he spent around Yeonsu, the more he saw past the intimidating exterior. She was careful with her strength, never using more force than needed. She was polite to everyone, even those who avoided her. When she smiled, which was rare, it transformed her entire face. She was lonely. Hansol recognized it because he felt the same way. One evening, Hansol finished his security shift and found Yeonsu still working in the machinery bay. She was lying under a power coupling, her enhanced arm deep inside a tangle of cables and circuits. Sparks occasionally flew from her work area. "Long day?" he asked. "The primary power relay is failing." Her voice came from under the machine. "If it goes completely, this entire section will lose life support." "Need help?" "Unless you have cybernetic hands that can work in a live electrical field, there is not much you can do." Hansol sat on a nearby crate and watched her work. Through the gaps in the machinery, he could see the concentration on her face. Her human hand held a scanner while her cybernetic arm performed delicate operations that would have electrocuted anyone else. "There," she said finally, sliding out from under the machine. "That should hold for another few months." She sat up and Hansol saw that she looked exhausted. There were dark circles under her eyes and grease stains on her face. Her work coveralls were soaked with sweat. "When was the last time you took a break?" he asked. "Breaks are a luxury. The station needs these repairs. The station also needs its workers to not collapse from exhaustion." Yeonsu wiped her face with a clean rag. "I am fine." But Hansol could see she was not fine. He had noticed it over the past few days. She worked longer hours than anyone else. She ate her meals quickly and alone. She never seemed to relax or rest. "Why do you push yourself so hard?" he asked. Yeonsu was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than usual. "I'm looking for someone. My brother Taemin. He was working as a surveyor in the outer colonies when his ship disappeared. I need to earn enough credits to hire a proper search team. What happened to his ship? Nobody knows. He was surveying mineral deposits near the Dust Bowl Nebula. One day his ship sent a routine check-in. The next day, nothing. The Colonial Authority says pirates probably destroyed the ship for its equipment." Hansol heard the pain in her voice. "But you do not believe that. Taemin is smart. Too smart to get caught by ordinary pirates. If his ship was destroyed, there would have been wreckage. A distress signal, something." She stood up and began putting away her tools. "I think something else happened to him." "What kind of something else?" "I do not know yet, but I will find out." Hansol watched her methodical movements as she cleaned up the work area. Everything she did was precise and controlled. But he was beginning to see the cracks in that control, the worry she carried, the fear that she might never find her brother. "You know," he said carefully, "I still have some contacts from my Navy days, people who might have access to shipping records or patrol reports from that region." Yeonsu stopped what she was doing. "You would do that?" "Of course. We look out for each other, right?" She turned to face him. In the harsh industrial lighting of the machinery bay, Hansol could see how isolated she had become. How long it had been since anyone had offered to help her with anything. Most people saw her cybernetic enhancements and her imposing size, and made assumptions. They thought she was dangerous or unfriendly or both. They kept their distance because she was different. Because she was more than human in some ways. But Hansol saw something else. He saw someone who had been alone for too long. Someone who had forgotten what it felt like to have another person care about her problems. The question came out before he could think about it. "Yeonsu, can I touch you?" She went very still. Her dark eyes searched his face as if trying to understand why he had asked. In the silence between them, Hansol heard the humming of the machinery and the distant sounds of the station around them. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Because you look like you need to know that someone else is real, that you are not alone." For a moment, Hansol thought she would say no. Her expression was unreadable. Then slowly she smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it changed everything about her face. "Yes," she said. Hansol stood up and walked over to her. Very gently, he placed his hand on her shoulder. Through the fabric of her coveralls, he could feel the warmth of her skin and the solid reality of her presence. She did not pull away. Instead, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, there were tears starting to form. "Thank you," she whispered. They stood like that for several minutes, Two people who had been running from their pasts, finding a moment of connection in the industrial heart of a forgotten station. Hansel realized that his question had been as much for himself as for her. He had been alone too long as well. When they finally stepped apart, something had changed between them. The careful distance they had maintained was gone. In its place was something warmer, something that felt like the beginning of trust. "I meant what I said about helping you find your brother," Hansel said. Yeon-soo nodded. "I know, and Hansel? Thank you for asking." As they walked out of the machinery bay together, Hansel felt something he had not felt since his disgrace and discharge. He felt needed, useful, like he might be able to make a difference in someone else's life. Behind them, the repaired machinery hummed quietly, keeping the station alive for another day. Hansel kept his promise. He spent 3 days sending messages to old Navy contacts, asking careful questions about missing ships near the Dust Bowl Nebula. Most of his former colleagues ignored him. A few sent short replies saying they could not help. But one message came back with information that changed everything. Commander Park, who had served with Hansel on the cruiser Incheon, sent a coded transmission. "Meet me at Docking Bay 12 in 2 hours. Come alone. Destroy this message." Hansel found Yeon-soo in the machinery bay and told her about the meeting. She wanted to come with him, but he convinced her to stay behind. If this was a trap, there was no point in both of them getting caught. Docking Bay 12 was in the oldest section of Kepler Station. The lights flickered and the air smelled like rust. Commander Park was waiting by an emergency airlock, wearing civilian clothes that did not hide his military bearing. "Hansel," Park said without warmth. "I heard you were discharged." "I was." "What do you know about ships disappearing near the Dust Bowl?" Park looked around to make sure they were alone. "Officially nothing. Pirates are a known problem in that region. Ships get raided and destroyed. End of story. Unofficially? Unofficially, something else is happening out there. Ships are not being destroyed. They are being taken. Intact." Hansel felt his stomach tighten. Taken by who? We do not know for certain, but the pattern suggests organized operation, professional work. Not random piracy. Park pulled out a small data chip. This contains the patrol logs from that sector. Everything we know about the missing ships. Why are you helping me? Because whatever is happening out there, it is getting worse. More ships disappearing every month. The Navy wants to investigate, but the politicians say it is too expensive. Too dangerous. Park handed him the chip. Maybe someone who is not bound by official policy can find answers. After Park left, Hansel returned to find Yeon-soo waiting in her quarters. Her small room was neat and clean, with only basic furniture and a few personal items. A picture of a young man sat on her desk. Her brother, Hansel realized. "What did you learn?" she asked. Hansel inserted the data chip into her computer terminal. Files appeared on the screen. Ship registrations, disappearance reports, patrol schedules. As they read through the information, a disturbing picture emerged. 17 ships had vanished in the past 8 months. All were small vessels. Survey ships, cargo haulers, private transports. All had disappeared near the same region of space, a cluster of dead star systems on the edge of the Dust Bowl Nebula. "Look at this." Yeon-soo pointed to a section of the report. All the missing ships were carrying humans. Hansel checked the crew manifests. She was right. Every single missing vessel had human crew members. Some had alien crew as well, but all had humans aboard. "That cannot be coincidence," he said. "No. Someone is specifically targeting ships with human crews." Yeon-soo's voice was tight with controlled anger. "The question is why?" They spent the next hour analyzing the data. The missing ships followed no clear pattern in terms of cargo or destination. But they all had one thing in common besides human crews. They were all lightly armed or completely defenseless. "We need more information," Hansel said. "And we need help." "What kind of help?" "The kind that can take us into the Dust Bowl to investigate. We need a ship and crew that knows how to handle trouble." Yeon-soo was quiet for a moment. "I know someone who might help. But you will not like it." "Who?" "Ji-hoon. He runs cargo between the outer colonies. His ship is fast and he knows the dangerous regions." Hansel groaned. "Ji-hoon the smuggler? The one who got banned from 3 different stations for illegal cargo?" "The same. But he is also one of the best pilots in this sector, and he hates the aliens who prey on human ships." "How do you know Ji-hoon?" "He brought me to Kepler Station. I worked passage on his ship when I left the colonies. Yeonsu stood up. I will talk to him tomorrow. Wait. Even if Ji-hoon agrees to help, we still need more than just a ship. If something is taking vessels near the Dust Bowl, we need to be prepared for a fight. I can handle myself in a fight. I know you can. But this feels bigger than just pirates or raiders. We might need technical support. Someone who can hack into systems or break encryptions. Yeonsu smiled slightly. I know someone for that too. The next morning, they met Ji-hoon at a bar in the lower levels of the station. He was a short, thick man with gray hair and scars on his hands from years of handling dangerous cargo. His ship, the Arirang, was docked in the civilian section. You want to go hunting in the Dust Bowl? Ji-hoon asked after they explained the situation. That is suicide territory. Even the Navy stays away from those systems. My brother is out there, Yeonsu said simply. I am going with or without help. Ji-hoon studied her face. You serious about this? Completely. What makes you think your brother is still alive? If something is taking ships, the crews are probably dead. If they wanted to kill the crews, they would just destroy the ships in space. Cheaper and easier. The fact that they are taking the ships intact suggests they want the people alive. Ji-hoon nodded slowly. Makes sense. But alive for what purpose? That is what we need to find out, Han-sol said. This is not going to be cheap. Fuel, supplies, hazard pay for my crew. You looking at 50,000 credits minimum? Yeonsu reached into her jacket and pulled out a credit chip. 60,000. But I want to leave as soon as possible. Ji-hoon stared at the chip. Where did you get that kind of money? I have been saving every credit I earn for months. Working double shifts, selling everything I own. Her voice was steady, but Han-sol could hear the desperation underneath. This is everything I have. And if we do not find your brother, if this is a waste of time, then at least I will know I tried. Ji-hoon picked up the credit chip and slipped it into his pocket. All right. But we do this my way. My ship, my rules, and we bring backup. What kind of backup? Han-sol asked. I know a young hacker named So-young. She has reasons to hate the aliens who operate in the outer regions. Lost her family to slavers 3 years ago. She has been looking for a chance to hit back. Can she handle herself in a dangerous situation? Better than most. She grew up on the rough colonies. Knows how to fight and how to run systems that others cannot even understand. Yeonsu looked at Han-sol. What do you think? Han-sol thought about the 17 missing ships. About Taemin somewhere in the dark between the stars. About the chance to do something meaningful again instead of just checking security passes on a forgotten station. I think we are going to need all the help we can get, he said. Good. Ji-hoon stood up. Because if we are really doing this, we leave tomorrow night. I need time to modify the Arirang for extended operation in the nebula. And we all need to understand something. What? Whatever is taking those ships, it is organized and professional. We might be walking into something much bigger and more dangerous than simple piracy. Ji-hoon's expression was serious. Once we enter the Dust Bowl, there is no guarantee we will make it back out. Yeonsu met his gaze without flinching. I understand the risks. We all do, Han-sol added. But some things are worth the risk. As they left the bar, Han-sol felt the familiar mixture of fear and excitement that came before a dangerous mission. Tomorrow night, they would leave the safety of Kepler Station and venture into one of the most lawless regions of space. But for the first time since his discharge from the Navy, Han-sol felt like he was part of something important again, something that mattered. Behind them, the station hummed with its normal activity. People going about their daily lives, unaware that 4 strangers were about to risk everything to uncover a truth that might shake the foundations of human space. The Arirang was not beautiful, but it was strong. Ji-hoon had spent 30 years modifying the old cargo ship until it barely resembled its original design. Extra armor plating covered the hull. The engines had been upgraded for speed and endurance. Hidden weapon systems were built into what looked like normal cargo pods. So-young met them at the ship. She was younger than Han-sol had expected, maybe 25 years old. Her black hair was cut short, and she wore clothes that had seen too many dangerous places. But her eyes were sharp and intelligent, and when she spoke about computer systems, she sounded like an expert. I have been tracking the communication patterns in the Dust Bowl region, she told them as they prepared for departure. There is definitely organized activity out there. Encrypted transmissions on frequencies that pirates do not usually use. Can you break the encryption? Yeonsu asked. Give me time and the right equipment, I can break anything. So Young smiled, but it was not a happy expression. Whoever is out there, they think they are safe from human technology. They are wrong. Ji-hoon finished his pre-flight checks and called everyone to the bridge. Listen carefully. The Dust Bowl Nebula is not like normal space. The dust clouds interfere with sensors and communications. Navigation is difficult, and there are things in there that do not show up on any star charts. What kind of things? Han Sol asked. Dead ships, abandoned stations, gravity wells that appear without warning. The nebula has been collecting space junk for thousands of years. Ji-hoon started the engines. Stay alert and do exactly what I tell you. This is not a place for mistakes. The Arirang undocked from Kepler Station and began the 3-day journey to the nebula. During the trip, Han Sol learned more about his companions. Ji-hoon had been smuggling cargo for 15 years, but he had started as a legitimate trader. Pirates had destroyed his first ship and killed his crew. He had been alone in an escape pod for 6 days before rescue came. So Young had grown up on a mining colony called New Busan. When she was 22, alien slavers had attacked the colony. They had taken her parents and younger sister. So Young had hidden in the computer center and watched everything through the security cameras. She had been hunting the slavers ever since. They call themselves the Hegemony, she explained one evening as they sat in the ship's small common area. A coalition of different alien species that see humans as useful resources. Strong backs for manual labor, intelligent minds for technical work. Why humans specifically? Yeonsu asked. Because we adapt. Put a human on any planet in any environment, and eventually they will figure out how to survive. Other species are more specialized. They can only live in certain conditions. So Young's voice was bitter. The Hegemony has discovered that human slaves are more valuable than any other species. Han Sol felt sick. How many colonies have they hit? Nobody knows for sure. The attacks happen in remote areas where news travels slowly. By the time anyone reports it, the slavers are long gone. Why does the government not do something? What government? Ji-hoon asked. Human space is scattered across hundreds of systems. Each colony makes its own rules. There is no central authority with enough power to fight something like the Hegemony. On the 3rd day, they reached the edge of the Dust Bowl Nebula. Through the viewports, Han Sol could see enormous clouds of cosmic dust and gas stretching away into the distance. The clouds glowed with strange colors as they reflected light from distant stars. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Sensors are already showing interference, So Young reported from her station. We will be flying mostly blind once we get deeper into the nebula. That works both ways, Ji-hoon said. If we cannot see them, they cannot see us either. The Arirang entered the nebula and immediately everything changed. The viewport showed swirling clouds of dust that seemed to move with their own life. The ship's sensors flickered and displayed confusing readings. Even the artificial gravity felt less stable. Stay strapped in, Ji-hoon warned. Gravitational fields in here can change without warning. They flew deeper into the nebula, following the projected course toward the region where the ships had disappeared. The journey was nerve-wracking. Several times the ship shuddered as it passed through unexpected gravitational distortions. Once they had to change course quickly to avoid a massive piece of wreckage that appeared out of nowhere. What was that? Han Sol asked, looking at the twisted metal floating past their viewports. Looks like part of a space station, Ji-hoon replied. Been here a long time, judging by the damage. After 8 hours of careful navigation, So Young detected something on her instruments. I am picking up artificial signals. Very faint, but definitely not natural. Where? Bearing 27 Mark IV. Distance approximately 50,000 kilometers. Ji-hoon adjusted their course. Everyone stay quiet. If there is a facility out here, it will have sensors watching for approaching ships. As they got closer, the signals became stronger. So Young worked frantically at her computer, trying to decode the transmissions. Her face grew pale as she translated the messages. Oh no, she whispered. Han Sol, Yeonsu, you need to see this. They gathered around her station. On her screen was a decoded transmission in multiple languages. Human, Centaurian, and several alien scripts. But the message was clear. Facility 7 to Transport Command. Current inventory. 478 human subjects, 112 Centaurian subjects, 67 subjects of various species. Request immediate pickup for Batch 17. Genetic modification experiments proceeding as scheduled. Yeonsu gripped the edge of the console. Genetic modification experiments. They are not just taking people for manual labor, So Young said quietly. They are experimenting on them. Trying to understand what makes humans so adaptable, Hansel felt rage building in his chest. How many facilities like this are there? The transmission mentioned Facility 7. That suggests at least 6 others. We have to stop them, Yansu said. 4 of us against a hegemony installation? Ji-hun shook his head. That is suicide. Then we get help. We gather evidence and take it back to human space. Make people understand what is happening. First, we need to see what we are dealing with, Hansel said. And we need to find out if Tai Min is in there. So Young continued monitoring the transmissions. After an hour, she found what they were looking for. A facility manifest that listed current subjects by name and origin. There in the middle of the list was Tai Min, human male, acquired from survey vessel Lucky Strike. He is alive, Yeonsu breathed. For now, So Young added grimly. But according to this schedule, Batch 17 is being transferred tomorrow. If your brother is in that batch, we get him out tonight, Yeonsu said. How? Ji-hun demanded. We do not even know how many guards they have. What their defenses look like. We find out, Hansel said. We do reconnaissance first. Then we plan a rescue. As if summoned by their conversation, the facility appeared through the dust clouds ahead of them. It was enormous, built into what looked like a captured asteroid. Docking bays dotted its surface, and lights indicated active operations inside. Look at the size of that thing, Ji-hun muttered. It must hold thousands of people. So Young was already scanning the facility with her instruments. Heavy shielding, multiple defense platforms, at least 20 armed ships in the docking bays. And somewhere in there is my brother, Yeonsu said quietly. Hansol looked at his companions, a disgraced ex-officer, a woman searching for her family, a smuggler with his own grudges, a young hacker seeking revenge. Not exactly a military strike team, but they were all that stood between the people in that facility and whatever experiments the hegemony was conducting. Sometimes Hansel realized being in the right place at the right time was more important than being prepared. All right, he said. Let's figure out how to rob a hegemony prison. Outside the viewports, the alien facility continued its dark work, unaware that 4 humans were about to show them why their species had earned a reputation for being unpredictable and dangerous. The plan was simple and dangerous. So Young would disable the facility's communications and security systems. Ji-hun would position the Arirang for a quick escape. Hansol and Yeonsu would infiltrate the prison levels and free as many captives as possible. If they were lucky, they would find Tai Min and get out before the hegemony forces could respond. Hansol knew their chances were terrible. But sometimes terrible chances were better than no chances at all. The facility's main computer core is in Section C, So Young explained, studying the schematics she had hacked from their systems. If I can reach it, I can shut down their defenses and open all the prison cells at once. How long do you need? Hyunsu asked. 10 minutes to reach the core, 5 minutes to break their security. Then everything opens. That gives us a 15-minute window to find Tai Min and organize the prisoners, Hansol said. After that, this place will be crawling with guards. Ji-hun checked his weapons one more time. The moment So Young triggers the breakout, I start the engines. We will have maybe 20 minutes before their patrol ships can respond. They approached the facility using a debris field as cover. The Arirang looked like another piece of space junk floating in the nebula. When they were close enough, So Young launched herself toward the facility in a small maintenance pod. Her job was to find an access port and hack her way inside. Hansol and Yeonsu waited in the ship's airlock, wearing stolen hegemony uniforms that So Young had acquired during her computer infiltration. The uniforms were designed for a different species, so they fit poorly. But in the dim corridors of the facility, they might pass inspection. You ready for this? Hansol asked. Yeonsu nodded. Her cybernetic arm had been modified with tools for breaking locks and cutting through barriers. My ancestors fought cavalry and cannons with bows and arrows. I think I can handle some alien guards. 20 minutes later, So Young's voice crackled through their communicators. I am inside. Moving toward the computer core now. Hansol and Yeonsu launched their own pod toward a maintenance airlock on the lower levels of the facility. The airlock accepted their stolen access codes and they slipped inside. The corridors were narrow and dimly lit. The air smelled like disinfectant and fear. As they moved deeper into the facility, they began to hear voices. Human voices calling out in different languages, crying, pleading for help. The prison levels are just ahead, Hansol whispered, checking his scanner. They reached a security checkpoint manned by 2 hegemony guards. The aliens were tall and thin with pale gray skin and too many joints in their arms. They looked bored, as if guarding human prisoners was beneath their attention. Yeonsu stepped around the corner and walked toward the checkpoint like she belonged there. The guards looked up, confused by her size and the ill-fitting uniform. Before they could ask questions, she moved. Her cybernetic arm struck the first guard in the head, dropping him instantly. The second guard reached for his weapon, but Yeonsu was already there. She lifted him off the ground and held him against the wall until he stopped struggling. 2 down, she said quietly. They took the guards' weapons and access cards. The prison level stretched out ahead of them, lined with cells containing dozens of human prisoners. Men, women, children from across human space, all waiting to be experimented on by the hegemony scientists. Taemin, Yeonsu called softly. Taemin, where are you? A voice answered from the far end of the corridor. Yeonsu, is that really you? They ran toward the voice. In the last cell, they found a young man who looked like a smaller version of Yeonsu. He was thin and pale, but his eyes were bright with hope. How did you find me? He asked as Yeonsu worked to break the electronic lock on his cell. Long story. Are you hurt? Nothing permanent. But we need to get everyone out. They have been taking people for experiments. Most do not come back. So Young's voice came through the communicator. I have reached the computer core. Beginning the hack now. How many prisoners are there? Hansol asked. Maybe 200 on this level. More on the levels above and below. Hansol realized their plan was not big enough. They had come to rescue one person, but there were hundreds of people who needed help. Leaving them behind was not an option. So Young, can you open every cell in the facility? Give me 30 seconds. Suddenly alarms began to sound throughout the facility. Emergency lights flashed red and automated voices announced a security breach in multiple languages. They found me, So Young reported. But I am almost finished. Get ready. The sound of electronic locks disengaging echoed through the corridors. Cell doors slid open and confused prisoners stumbled out into the hallways. Some were human. Others were aliens from species that Hansol did not recognize. Listen to me, Yeonsu shouted over the alarms. We are here to rescue you. Follow us to the docking bays. Stay together and do not panic. But panic was exactly what happened. Hundreds of frightened people poured into the corridors. Some ran in the wrong direction. Others froze in place, unable to believe they were really free. The noise was overwhelming. Heavy footsteps echoed from the main corridors. Hegemony security forces were responding to the breakout. This way, Hansol called, trying to guide the crowd toward the nearest docking bay. Everyone this way. The first security team rounded the corner and opened fire. Energy blasts lit up the corridor as prisoners scattered for cover. Hansol and Taemin returned fire with the weapons they had taken from the guards. Then Yeonsu did something that Hansol would remember for the rest of his life. She stepped into the middle of the corridor, directly between the hegemony forces and the escaping prisoners. Energy blasts struck her reinforced body armor, but she did not fall. Instead, she raised her arms and let out a war cry that echoed through the entire facility. It was not just a shout. It was the voice of every human who had ever refused to surrender, every person who had chosen to fight against impossible odds. It was the sound of a species that had climbed out of caves and built ships to reach the stars. The prisoners heard that cry, and something changed in them. The fear left their faces, replaced by determination. They stopped running in panic and began moving with purpose. Those who could fight picked up fallen weapons. Those who could not fight helped others who were injured or weak. For our families, someone shouted. For our freedom, called another. The hegemony guards had expected to face frightened prisoners. Instead, they found themselves fighting desperate humans who had decided they would rather die free than live as test subjects. The battle moved through the facility as more security teams arrived. But the prisoners fought like cornered animals, using their knowledge of human ships and technology to turn the facility's own systems against their captors. So Young's voice came through the communicator. I have control of the main systems, shutting down artificial gravity in the security sectors. Suddenly, the hegemony guards found themselves floating helplessly while the humans, who had grown up in variable gravity environments, adapted instantly to the new conditions. Docking Bay 7 is clear, Ji-hoon reported. I have the engines running. Get everyone aboard now. Hansol watched in amazement as the rescued prisoners organized themselves into groups. The stronger ones helped the weaker ones. Those with technical knowledge worked to disable hegemony equipment. Those with medical training cared for the injured. This was what the hegemony had never understood about humans. They were not just individually adaptable, they became stronger when they worked together. Their greatest weapon was not their technology or their physical abilities. It was their refusal to abandon each other. The evacuation took 25 minutes. By the time the last prisoner was aboard the Arirang, hegemony patrol ships were closing in from all directions. Ji-hun pushed the engines to maximum power and the ship shot away from the facility into the cover of the dust clouds. Behind them, the hegemony facility burned. So Young had set their main reactor to overload before she escaped. The explosion would be visible from 3 star systems away. How many did we get out? Hansol asked. 437 people, Taemin replied. He was helping treat the injured in the ship's cargo bay. From 16 different worlds. Yeon-soo found Hansol on the bridge watching the stars through the viewports. The nebula was behind them now and ahead lay human space. What happens now? She asked. Now we tell everyone what the hegemony is doing. We make sure every human colony knows about the experiments and the slave raids. Will they believe us? Hansol gestured toward the cargo bay full of rescued prisoners. With 400 witnesses? They will have to believe us. Yeon-soo smiled, and this time it was not quiet or small. It was the smile of someone who had found her brother and discovered something even more important. She had found her place in the galaxy. You know, she said, when you asked if you could touch me back on Kepler Station, I thought you were just being kind. I was. But it was more than that, was not it? You were asking if I was real. If I mattered, Hansol nodded. And you are. We all are. Through the viewports, the stars of human space grew brighter. Behind them, the Dust Bowl Nebula was already sending out distress signals as hegemony forces tried to understand what had happened. They would learn soon enough. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy not as victims or test subjects, but as a species that would cross any distance and face any danger to protect their own. The Apache's war cry still echoed in the corridors of the Arirang, carried by 437 voices that would never be silent again.